My wife said she only loved me as a friend, so I distanced myself and had her contribute to the bills. Now she says I'm being unfair and selfish. Posted by you/ThemaShooter. So I, 35M, have been with my wife, 35F, for 20 years, married for 15. We have 2 kids, 12 and 14. We absolutely adore them and work tirelessly to provide them with the best possible life. For the past 3 years, things have been somewhat bumpy. I understand that our kids are at an age where they require a ton of our attention and resources with school, band, club sports, and other extracurricular. I'm aware of the physical and emotional toll that can have on marriages. However, for these past 3 years, my wife and I have had very little intimacy, and we've been trying very hard to work on that aspect of our relationship. This past year has been the most difficult and, by far, the darkest year in our marriage. We didn't talk very much. We essentially became roommates, co-parenting our kids under the same roof. It was very depressing and very demoralizing. It was to the point where we began contemplating divorce, and it became very gloomy in the household because of that. We began seeking help with both individualized therapy and couples therapy, and it has helped. Little by little, we started to get along and have deeper conversations about what our marriage looks like and what we would love for it to look like. This is where it gets tough. As time passed, my wife told me she was no longer in love with me and only saw me as a best friend. She said that she only loved me in a platonic way, and this was one of the main reasons she didn't have any desire for intimacy. This shocked me, and quite frankly, I was devastated. I became angry and depressed, and I couldn't fathom the thought that I was no longer wanted or desired by the person I felt completely in love with. Things began to deteriorate, and not long after, we were back to square one. I sat down with her one afternoon and had a heart-to-heart and began to ask questions about where the root of this problem lies, and her answer was, I don't know, and I have built up resentment towards you, but I don't know where it stems from. As you can imagine, this provides little to no insight into approaching this. I'm puzzled, frustrated, and unsure of what to do at this point. We've arrived at a place where she says she has no drive and no desire for intimacy or connection. She says she only wants companionship, which means our co-parenting roommate dynamic. I asked her what I could possibly do or what it was about me that was so unattractive or undesirable, and her response was always, I don't know. She stated that she loves me, but it's not the same. She said that she has felt disconnected for years and that our marriage takes up too much work. Her focus is only on the children for now, and my co-parenting contributions are meaningful to her in our home. It's tough to realize that the person you love has no feelings for you. I feel like I'm only here to contribute financially and as a parent. What she means by companionship is that she's comfortable with the convenience of having a good father for our kids and my financial contribution to the household. Regarding intimacy, she told me that it's not something she's interested in or wants at this time. She mentioned that the only way to get to a point for any of that is to be intoxicated, which I believe is incredibly awful and very wrong. I told her I did not think forcing herself to be intimate by drinking was good, and I declined to be a part of that, which upset her and made her more distant. We're both extremely honest and transparent. We've never cheated on each other, and we are always free to look through each other's phones, emails, and socials, and we hardly ever do. I asked her if there was someone else, and she declined. Honestly, I believe her. We then peacefully went through each other's things, and as expected, it was clean. We've always been very forward, even with the hard topics, so I don't smell nor feel any foul play or infidelity. I do not know how to improve our situation, and I'm becoming anxious and desperate. We're both fairly young, healthy, and good looking. We both have promising careers and are good parents. I'm unsure how our lives could have driven us to this point. It feels so awful to be unwanted and undesired by my spouse. I hate it. Update 1. One of the main things that was discussed in the therapy sessions was resentment, and it has been really eating me up inside, knowing my wife keeps telling me she doesn't know why she's resentful or doesn't know why this is affecting her emotionally and mentally. I brought this up with our therapist once again and resurfaced the conversation about being married for so long and being together since we were 14 years old. I told her about our long history of growing up and how having children when she was only 19 significantly changed the trajectory of our lives. We experienced severe poverty and many hardships in the process, and we essentially had zero social life for the past 10 years because we were so busy raising babies. She followed up with tons of questions directly, mostly at my wife about her feelings towards this, and 90% of the responses were very our kids focused. It definitely felt like she was afraid of saying, yes, it sucked, because she would feel guilt or shame because it would imply she regrets the kids. I mentioned this in the session, and the therapist encouraged her to look at this outside of the lens of being a mother and to try to view it a bit more selfishly and individually, and it was very eye-opening. My wife mentioned that she was very frustrated that we missed out on many things. She also clearly said, I do not think I missed out on other partners or dating or partying, but I certainly lost all my friends. This was huge because one big piece that has caused a strain in our lives is how isolated we've been. I reminded her that having good friends and making time for herself and her friendships is important. For the past 3 years, we've had multiple conversations about friends and how important it is to have them in life, especially when you have similar peers who can help in many areas of life that you perhaps have no experience navigating. My wife has always avoided this, even though she's always been someone who needs external stimuli. The main reason for her not investing in friends or even herself has always been the kids. At this point in our session, there was a common denominator for most of the frustrations and problems she was experiencing. So I simply asked her, do you think you may be upset with me because I'm responsible for these kids in the sense that I got you pregnant so young? I wasn't ready, but she said she was upset with me. She also agreed that she knows that's unreasonable because it takes 2 to tango. It was progress because it gave us something to work on and help alleviate some of these burdens, so we agreed to invest more time in nurturing good friendships both together and individually. Toward the end of the session, we began to discuss what actionable items we would take from it. At this point, the outcome still needed to be clearer. I was very direct and forward in asking my wife about her plan. She started basically saying the same thing. She doesn't have any desire to be intimate with me as of now. She loves me immensely and feels terrible for not being there for me. I also brought up the brief swinging that happened, to which, for the 50th time, she said it wasn't a problem. I agree with her on this. When we tried it, this was a mechanical approach to solving a very non-existent problem. We have no issue with this. We know it happened. We tried it and mutually stopped and turned the page. I also brought up other life events that may cause resentment, but we ended up not getting anywhere else as far as the root of resentment, which was discouraging. I then told my wife that I would not accept that arrangement. I told her that I'd done everything I could and that this issue had reached a point where it had nothing to do with me or required me to do anything I was currently not doing. I was very direct and said that I would not accept this dynamic and that I needed to be with someone actively involved in our marriage, who works towards resolutions and is very interested in maintaining an active intimacy. I expressed how I would not be a convenience and that there was more to life than being roommates and co-parents. I ensured she knew I loved her dearly and wanted this to work for the better. I also told her that I'm fully committed to this marriage so long as she is and that if she isn't, it's okay. However, I will only be a part of something where these efforts are reciprocated. I told her I had no plans of leaving and did not want a divorce. However, I clarified that divorce would be the only outcome if this dynamic continued. Of course, tears were involved. It was a very bleak and sad ending to the session. Still, nothing was said, and I walked out very discouraged and determined to start working on the 180 as soon as we left the room. It's painful and very difficult because much of the 180 requires you to be very short, cold, and transactional. The saddest part is realizing this dynamic is already very cold and transactional. Here is where it gets very interesting. I started working on implementing many of the 180 recommendations that same day. I told my wife that things would be a bit different moving forward. I will honor her roommate and co-parent dynamic without reproach, and it should be no mistake that I am not happy here. I will never be okay with it, but I am done working on it if she isn't going to work on it. She agreed and went to bed. I started to build distance and focus on myself. It is very short and transactional. She asked for help with some of her personal things, which I declined, and it really shocked her. She was upset, saying I was petulant. I explained that she was now entirely in charge of her life and issues. We didn't talk all day, and we only spoke when necessary. A few days later, I kept this going, and she was very visibly upset and stressed. I typically react to that with gestures of help or nurturing, but I didn't do so this time. That night, she was crying, telling me she was stressed and she thought something was wrong with me because I was indifferent. I simply listened, then told her that this was the dynamic she proposed and that I was merely taking care of myself and focusing on myself. I'm not going to lie. It has been tough to be cold and distant because, as I mentioned before, I love her and wish I could hold and love her. However, this is manipulative to get her way and keep me in the friend zone. So, I've been staying the course. We're now going on a week of this 180. There have been many changes on her side. She realizes there is more to me than just friends and co-parenting. I texted her a few days ago, essentially itemizing bills and separating the financial responsibilities 50-50, and she lost it. She told me it was too much, to which I responded, "Hey, friends go in 50-50, and as your friend, I expect nothing less." This was very eye-opening because it showed me how I'm taken for granted and how her level of comfort and convenience at my expense is overlooked. I pushed through anyway and told her that this was the new dynamic she asked for and that it was still a bargain because she would have to be 100% if she was alone. While the 180 has been working in many different areas, I am still very sad about the overall situation. There have been many eye-opening statements being said and realizations that have not been pleasant to encounter. It has also sparked new energy and new efforts on her side. She's definitely seeking to talk to me more often, and while it's hard to turn down, I hope if things improve, this continues to happen. I've also noticed that she's making more time for herself aside from being a mom, which is huge because she has pretty much neglected herself for years. I'm happy seeing her be more herself. I hope that as we work on ourselves, the marriage improves. There is no telling at this point where this will go. We are very cordial and amicable even to this day, and that's a perfect sign. Boundaries are set, expectations are very clear, and I feel that no matter the outcome, I will be at peace with everything that has been done. We're still going to continue the couples therapist until we either rekindle our marriage or end up in divorce. Having this non-biased third party helps as a witness and as a guide through this. No matter what, I will always love my wife. However, I will not participate in a marriage with no intimacy because we both deserve better.